You see, journalism really is the most important thing. And if you don't have a journalism job, really, what are you doing with your life? You're probably messing around and didn't try hard enough to become a journalist. I originally wanted to cover basketball, and there were a lot of people already covering basketball, and not that would have been an issue for me, but I was a producer at the time, and one of my hosts introduced me to mixed martial arts, and I just got hooked on it. I started to watch events that were taking place in Japan at 3 a.m. This is, of course, before I had kids. So I was able to take the time to watch all kinds of mixed martial arts from around the world, and I just wanted to learn everything about it. And all of the knowledge that I had about basketball, which was kind of encyclopedic knowledge at the time, I really channeled that into mixed martial arts and became so engrossed in the sport. And now that I've ended up covering the sport, it's really a dream come true. So I'm the lead reporter at Sportsnet for mixed martial arts. They recently got the rights back to the UFC after it had left Sportsnet for about 10 years. They brought me on board to lead the Sportsnet mixed martial arts team. And my job involves interviewing fighters on a week-to-week basis, going to the big events and covering them on location, doing hits in Sportsnet Central about any sort of news or event coverage for any sort of UFC events. So really anything that happens in the sphere of mixed martial arts, I'm the go-to guy for Sportsnet. I think they're mutually exclusive. I think that being a fan and lover of the sport allows you to put everything into the job. A lot of people think of it as, well, you've got to be objective and unbiased, and you can still do all of that while being a fan of the sport. So I don't think that my love of the sport does anything but help me in terms of doing my job. Well, when I was a student at Humber, my mindset was always just be the best at what you're doing. The same kind of energy that I would channel into the workplace, I really wanted to channel into being a student. My mindset was, I'm gonna get a job in this business, but I need to show that I can stand out above the rest of the pack and really find what my interest was and lean into it. Find what I'm really good at and lean into that. And I think that's such an important thing that you can do while you are a student, is recognize your strengths, improve your weaknesses, but also really lean into your strengths and show why you'd be an asset at having those strengths in the workplace. We did a project where we were reporting on a car crashing into the Humber Arboretum. And he was the police officer, and you would interview him. And I ended up rolling up my pant legs and walking into the pond at the Humber Arboretum and took fake pictures like this, like I was the photographer. And he looked at me, he goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm taking pictures. I want to make sure that I'm able to document this car. It's in the pond right now. And I want to make sure that I have the best pictures for the article I'm going to write." He just looked at me sideways. And then I found out that the next year when he did that same assignment with the students, he asked them why none of them were rolling up their pant legs and walking into the pond to take pictures of the car in the pond. So that's something that I remember very fondly of my experience at Humber. When I came to Humber, they didn't have a sports journalism stream, and there were some other colleges that did, but I also wanted to keep my options open. I really wanted to learn about the craft as a whole. I have a lot of interests outside of sports, including music and television, movies, popular culture, and my background from my undergraduate degree at university was popular culture, film, so I wanted to keep that door open as well. And that's why I chose to go for a more general journalism stream, but at the same time, I was really interested in sports. So a lot of my energy was channeled into doing sports reporting here, which was really great because everybody that was in this program had different interests. Whereas if you're taking a sports journalism course, everybody's trying to vie for the same sort of stories and the same sort of subject. So I felt like that was something that was an advantage for me. Ultimately, sports is fun. And when I was looking at the kind of job that I wanted to do, I wanted to have a job that was going to be hard, but that was going to be fun and rewarding. And I think that covering competition in sports, something that I grew up watching as a kid, that you, as a child, have so much positive energy towards and so much enthusiasm for, to bring that same sort of childlike quality to the job that I was doing, I thought was going to be a real asset. So that's why sports was something that I really gravitated towards. Yeah, so my path from Humber student to being an on-air reporter is a very interesting maze to go through. As a student at Humber, I was an intern at Sportsnet 590, which is a radio station here. And when I was at Sportsnet 590, I really stood out in terms of my work as an intern, that one of the producers got hired full-time to start a new radio station and brought me on as a full-time producer. So I was very much behind the scenes early in my career. I went from being a producer, for radio, to a producer for podcasts, to a talent producer, guest booker for a nationally televised sports program called Off the Record with Michael Landsberg. And then from there, I became just generally a guest booker for the Bell Media family. And then I moved over to covering the UFC and mixed martial arts because my bosses knew that I was good at what I did, whatever it was they asked me to do. They saw that I was excelling, and they knew that I had a passion for mixed martial arts. So they moved me over to becoming a reporter for mixed martial arts. And then from there, Sportsnet ended up hiring me as their mixed martial arts reporter when they picked up the rights to the UFC. The advice that I always give students is don't wait for someone to tell you what to do or how to do something. Go out and try it. There are so many different ways and avenues for you to test yourself out, to do podcasts or do field reporting, where the costs are so low these days for the equipment that there's really only one barrier of entry in terms of doing the job, which is you. If you're not willing to take that first step or get outside of your comfort zone, that's going to be a real hindrance. So always try to get outside of your comfort zone, accept failure, and think of failure as something that's going to fuel you to success, because everybody in this industry has experienced failure many times. And it's something that I personally have always used as something that is not a deterrent, but something that's going to help me get better and improve. I think to be a quality journalist, you have to make sure that you're working ethically and that you're maintaining relationships in a way that are going to be taken care of and nurtured over the years. I think that it's very important that people trust you, not just your audience, but also the people that you're working with in order to break news and report on whatever it is you're reporting on. The thing that I enjoy the most about being a journalist is the work. I just love everything about journalism and what it is. Reporting to the public, being creative, being able to solve things on the fly, improvising. All of these different traits that go into being a great journalist and great reporter are things that I value as a human characteristic, first and foremost, and getting to use those traits in journalism is something that I value so much. It means a lot to me because this is the World MMA Awards, and I'm the only reporter that was nominated both of those years that covers mixed martial arts for a regional outlet. So I'm working for a Canadian outlet, whereas all of the other nominees are working for national outlets. So to be able to get that distinction as somebody who covers the sport for a specific country gives it a little bit more importance and more weight for me. I think what's contributed the most to the growth is the UFC and how successful they've been and how they've been able to turn something that was considered rather taboo at a time and was on the brink of being banned by certain states to having household recognition, to where you've got national networks like ABC running mixed martial arts in the middle of the day on a Saturday and nobody's batting an eye about it. I think that that's been a really cool thing to see. I got to watch John Jones versus Alexander Gustafsson in person. That was at the Air Canada Centre, I think is widely considered one of the best fights of all time. I guess it's Scotiabank Arena now, I'm dating myself here, but I think that was considered one of the best fights of all time. So to be in the crowd for that is probably the most memorable one for me because I got to really feed off of that energy. Another one was Kelvin Gastelum versus Israel Adesanya. I got to cover that fight in Atlanta. I was backstage for it, so I didn't get to feel the full energy of that fight, but in terms of like the best fights I've seen, that's certainly up there. Yeah, it's very hard to understate how important social media growth has been, not just for the industry, but for myself. Having a platform like X or any of these other social media platforms where I can share news and build up my own personal brand, I think has been really important for journalists so that they can stand out. If you're good at using social media as a journalist, you can really show what your knowledge base is of whatever it is you're covering. I'm proud of a lot of different facets of my career, having booked interviews with so many different world-class athletes like Sidney Crosby. I have a lot of pride in the caliber of guests that I was able to book as a guest booker. And then moving on to my interviewing and my career covering mixed martial arts, all of my interviews with Dana White, I have a lot of pride in those, and being able to ask him tough questions that other people have been afraid to ask him. Interviewing Conor McGregor has been a highlight for me. I'm hoping to do that again very soon. And just getting to speak to all of the big names in the sport, and also building relationships with a lot of those names, has been something that I value a lot. Aaron Bronsteter, journalism, class of 2007. I'm the lead mixed martial arts reporter for Sportsnet, and I hope that you took something positive away from this.